Muhammad Nasir-ud-Dīn al-Albani was an Albanian Islamic scholar who specialized in the fields of hadith and fiqh. He was a watchmaker by trade, and a writer and speaker. Biography. Early life. Albani was born into a poor family in the city of Shkodër in northern Albania in 1914. During the reign of the secularist Albanian leader Ahmet Zogu, al-Albani's family migrated to Damascus, Syria. In Damascus, Albani completed his early education, initially taught by his father, in the Quran, Tajweed, Arabic linguistic sciences, Hanafi fiqh and further branches of the Islamic faith with the help of native Syrian scholars. In the meantime, he earned a modest living as a carpenter before joining his father as a watchmaker. Albani began to specialize in hadith studies in the 1930s. Though he was largely self-taught, he transcribed and commented on Abd al-Rahim ibn al-Husayn al-Iraqi's al-Mufni, and Haml al-Asfar fil Asfar fi Takrajem fil al-Hya min al-Akbar. He followed this with a series of lectures and books, as well as articles in Al-Mana magazine. Scholastic Career. Albani began delivering informal weekly lessons starting in 1954. By 1960, his popularity began to worry the government of Syria, and he was placed under surveillance by the Hafiz al-Assad government and was imprisoned twice in 1969 and under house arrest in the late 1970s. After a number of his works appeared in print, he was invited to teach hadith at the Islamic University of Medina by the university's then vice president Abd al-Aziz ibn Baz. Shortly upon his arrival, Albani's anti-traditionalist stances in Muslim jurisprudence angered the Wahhabi elite in Saudi Arabia, who were alarmed at Albani's intellectual challenges to the ruling Hanbali school of law but unable to challenge him openly due to his popularity. When Albani authored a book in support of his view that the niqab, or full-face veil, was not a binding obligation upon Muslim women, he caused a minor uproar in the country and gave his opponents justification for allowing his contract with the university to lapse without renewal. In 1963, he left Saudi Arabia and returned to his studies and work in the Arizona Zahiriyya Library, leaving his watch shop in the hands of one of his brothers. Imprisonment in Syria. Albani was arrested twice in Syria in the 1960s and was placed under house arrest in the 1970s by the Ba'ath regime of Hafiz al-Assad, and under house arrest in the late 1970s. Among the accusations against al-Albani by the Syrian government was one that accused him of promoting the Wahhabi Dawa, which distorted Islam and confused Muslims. He was jailed in May 1967 and released a month later, in June 1967. During his imprisonment, al-Albani edited al-Hafiz al-Munziri's Mukhtasar Sahih Muslim. Later life. Albani visited various countries for preaching and lectures, amongst them Qatar, Egypt, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Spain and the United Kingdom. He moved a number of times from Syria to Jordan, then Syria again, then Beirut, then the UAE, then again to Amman, Jordan. After bin Baz's intervention with Saudi educational management, Albani was invited to Saudi Arabia a second time in order to serve as the head of higher education in Islamic law in Mecca. This did not last due to controversy among the Saudi establishment regarding Albani's views. He returned to Syria where he was again jailed briefly. in 1979, at which point he moved to Jordan. He died in 1999 at the age of 85, the same year when he won the King Faisal International Prize for his contributions to scholarship in Islamic studies. Views: Albani was a well-known proponent of Salafism, and is considered one of the movement's primary figureheads in the 20th century. He was critical of what he viewed as the stagnation of Muslim civilization, blaming blind fanaticism to old traditions and the stifling of free thought and inquiry. This led Albani to criticism of the four mainstream schools of Islamic law, in addition to the spread of Sufism and the Tariqa system. Despite Salafism's frequent association with Wahhabism, Albani was a critic of the latter while a proponent of the former, and held a complex relationship with both movements. Albani was amongst some leading Salafi scholars who had been preaching against the warped literalism of extremists for decades. They were politically quietists who rejected vigilantism and rebellion against the state. They believed that Muslims should focus on purifying their beliefs and practice, and that, in time, God would bring victory over the forces of falsehood and unbelief. Albani's own views on jurisprudence and dogma are a matter of some discussion. During a 1989 visit to Saudi Arabia, Albani was asked if he adhered to the lesser-known Zahiri school of Islamic law, to which he replied in the affirmative. Albani's opponents among the mainstream have affirmed this as a point of criticism, though a number of Albani's students have denied his association with any formal school of jurisprudence. Controversies. Albani held a number of controversial views that ran counter to the wider Islamic consensus, and more specifically to Hanbali Wahhabi jurisprudence. These include his view that mihrabs, the niche found in a mosque indicating the direction of Mecca, were bid'ah; his view that it was permissible to pray in a mosque with one's shoes; his call for Palestinians to leave the occupied territories since, according to him, they were unable to practice the faith there as they should. This view was also controversial within the Salafi movement. His view that it is prohibited for women to wear gold bracelets; his view that it was not necessarily for women to cover their faces; his view that the Muslim ruler must be from the tribe of al-Quraysh. Additionally, Albani wrote a book in which he redefined the proper gestures and formulae that constitute the Muslim prayer ritual according to the Prophet's sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's practice, and contrary to the prescriptions of all established schools of jurisprudence. This book caused much unease as it argued that several details of the concrete prayer that have been taught from generation to generation are based on dubious hadith. On the performance of the tahajjud and tarawih prayer, Albani's descriptions deviated considerably from established practice. Albani openly criticized Sayyid Qutb after his execution. He claimed that Qutb had deviated in creed and held the belief of oneness of being. Further, Albani accused Hassan al-Banna, the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, of not being a religious scholar and holding positions contrary to the Sunnah. Criticism. Albani was criticized by a number of contemporary Sunni scholars. Safar al-Hawali criticized Albani for his categorical condemnation of taqlid and his radical hadith-based revisionism. In the early 1970s, Syrian hadith scholar Abd al-Fattah Abu Ghada published a tract against al-Albani's re-evaluation of Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. In 1987, the Egyptian hadith scholar Mahmoud Said Mamdouh published a work entitled Alerting the Muslim to al-Albani's transgression upon Sahih Muslim. He stated that, "Indeed, I have concluded that his methods disagree with those of the jurists and hadith scholars, and that his methods are creating great disarray and evident disruption in the proofs of jurisprudence both generally and specifically. He lacks trust in the imams of law and hadith, as well as in the rich hadith and law tradition handed down to us, in which the Ummah has taken great pride." Syrian hadith scholar Nasir-ud-Dīn rebutted some of al-Albani's views. His contemporary, the Syrian scholar said Ramadan al-Bouti took issue with Albani's well-known call for all Palestinians to leave Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. He also wrote two rebuttals of al-Albani entitled Anti-Madhabism, the dangers of an innovation that threatened the Sharia and Salafiyya, a blessed historical period, not a school of fiqh. Lebanese scholar Gibril Haddad has dubbed al-Albani the chief innovator of our time, and accused him of bid'ah. The reformed jihadist Sayyid Imam al-Sharif considered Albani to be wrapped in evil, and not suitable to be a sheikh for his alleged claim that jihad is defined as forgiveness, education and prayer. Legacy. Over a period of 60 years, Albani's lectures and published books were highly influential in the field of Islamic studies, and many of his works became reference points for other Islamic scholars. Muhibbuddin al-Khatib, a contemporary scholar, said of him that, "And from the callers to the Sunnah who devoted their lives to reviving it was our brother Muhammad Nasir-ud-Dīn or Najati al-Albani." Albani was awarded the King Faisal International Prize in 1999 for Islamic Studies. The award committee described him to be considered by many academics as probably the greatest Islamic scholar of the 20th century. In 2015, the Huffington Post remarked that Albani's movement of quietist Salafism, with its strong opposition to Tafkirism and violence, may provide the rhetoric that could prevent youth from being drawn to the apocalyptic rubbish of ISIS. His works, mainly in the field of hadith and its sciences, number over 100 and include At-Targhib Wat-Tahib, At-Tasfir Wat-Tarbiyah, At-Tawasulu Anathu wa Arkamuhu, IRWA al-Ghalal, Talkaz Arkam al-Janariz, Sahih wa-Dif Sunan Abu Dawud, Sahih wa-Dif Sunan at-Tirmidhi, Sahih wa-Dif Sunan Ibn Majah, Al-Aqidah at-Tahawiyya Shawat al-Alik, Sifatu Salati an-Nabi, Silsalat al-Hadith ad-Difa, Silsalat al-Hadith as-Sahihah, Salat at-Tarawi, Salat an-Nabawi.